I'm a reporter with the New York Times.
Just hold it like this?
Yeah.
I love finding out things that other people don't want me to know.
I just wanted to say,
Find yourself in these situations and see who you are.
And that's just part of the bargain.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Veronica Chambers, and I'm the editor of narrative projects here at the New York Times. I'm joined by my brilliant colleague, Charlie Brinkhurst-Cuff, senior staff editor for Black History Continued, and she's in the YouTube chat. Please say hello to her if you're joining us live. You can also tweet along with the program by using the hashtag Black History Continued. I'm excited to be with you from Washington, D.C., and on the beautiful campus of Howard University. It's fitting that we're in this awe-inspiring institution where Toni Morrison studied and taught, Debbie Allen, Donny Hathaway, and the great Chadwick Boseman perfected their artistry, and so many Black folks throughout history learned, lived, and loved their way into excellence, as tonight we close out this virtual series. This year we've examined how the past shapes the present and the future. We've provided reflections on dreams, joy, nature, and now home. This final episode, entitled Homecoming, explores community, spirit, and education. In the U.S., anti-literacy laws in the 18th and 19th centuries meant Black people were prohibited by law from reading and writing. Yet, as my colleague Sharana Alexander noted in our 2020 coverage of Homecoming, literacy was crucial to freedom. Black Americans not only had to fight for the ability to learn and be educated, but we also pushed for equality on behalf of all of those seeking an education. The work of racial justice, equality, and opening the door for possibility is still ongoing. Tonight, we will hear from thriving HBCU alumni and community members, like writer, content creator, and culture critic Emil Wilbekin, Emmy Award-winning correspondent, entrepreneur, and comedian Alzo Slade, and the Times' own Nikole Hannah-Jones. I also had the pleasure of having a conversation about Black girlhood with three remarkable women. Author and founder of Well-Read Black Girl, Glory Edom, author and chair of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation Board, Jody Patterson, and advocate and storyteller Christine Platt. But first, let's begin our program at the celebrated HBCU, Dillard University in New Orleans, a city whose people are culturally rich and vibrant, yet in the aftermath and displacement experienced this last month due to Hurricane Ida, they are once again asking themselves, what does it mean to come home? Welcome to Homecoming.
I chose Dillard because they gave me a scholarship. And I know that sounds like a very just like, oh, I'm following the money. It's like they were the only college that I was able to go to the table and like look at me more than just like a number, but look at my grades and see that I was like achieving, and they gave me a full ride. I'm from Oakland, California. I was so emotional because I knew I wanted to be independent, and I was leaving my family, you know, really for the first time. But a week later, I had a whole new family that, you know, I knew loved me here at Dillard.
As a senior, coming back from Hurricane Ida was a roller coaster of emotions and what nows. And when I think of home, it's kind of cliche, but I think about home is where the heart is. So wherever your heart leads you, wherever you feel comfortable and you feel like, you know, you can be your best self, I feel like that's home. The feel, the vibe of Dillard for Homecoming in general is a force to be reckoned with, for sure.
Homecoming is lit, very lit. It's very, very fun.
I'll play it to you here, but just going from F to B flat major, F to B flat major, F to B flat major. Okay.
Bud T, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah. At Temple School? Oh, yeah. Yeah, all right. Yeah, that was a vibe to it.
to keep that family.
Felt good. All right, let's say, man, it's your world, Square. To have everybody together at Dillard in New Orleans. Because obviously homecoming for us means something different. You know, you get it on the news, like you gotta leave. You know, and then when we out in the world chasing our dreams and stuff, coming home it means something special too. As far as Dillard is concerned, you know, my parents met here. Even though I went to Howard, Dillard has always been, you know, I feel one of my favorite but most unrecognizable places. HBCUs in general have been safe spaces for us to be creative, to like grow, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, away from the white gaze, where you gotta think about like how you gotta dress, how you gotta talk, how you gotta act, you could just shine, you know what I'm saying? And so in that spirit, you know, we're honoring the people who opened the doors for us before we stepped through them. We even knew there was a door. You know what I'm saying? And we're honoring the ones coming next to us, the little ones running around here helping us out. You know, it's about making everybody proud, making our ancestors proud, and making the future generation proud that they was a part of this. So now, you know, the spirit is with us, we here, and let's do it.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony. Oh yeah. Of liberty, yeah. Oh, liberty. Let us rejoice and rise. Hey, 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 hey. High as a listening sky. Let us resound, oh Lord, loud as the rolling sea. Oh, yeah. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark passions taught us. Oh, sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun. How a new day begun. Let us march on till victory. Oh, victory is won, yeah. Oh, victory, yeah. Oh no.
Let the show begin. Homecoming at a historically Black college and university is everything.
Homecoming itself, it's like being baptized in Blackness.
It's almost a ritual, it's almost like church.
It was a culture shock for me personally because I haven't really been to school with so many Black kids, and then to see them just doing all of these great things, I was just like, yeah, this is it.
Homecoming is a definite pick-me-up.
And homecoming is literally what the word is.
Going back.
You go back every year.
Even go back to how you were in college and no one's gonna judge you.
There is a buzz in the atmosphere.
The vibe.
The vibes were unmatched.
It is just the absolute best thing ever.
I grew up in Waterloo, Iowa, very white state, but the migration that brought Black people to Waterloo was an agrarian migration. These were sharecroppers from the South, and my grandmother didn't even have a middle school education. She had to quit school before she finished 5th grade. So we didn't have a Black community that had a connection to college at all, or that had a connection to historically Black colleges. And I went to majority white school. And my parents put us in the program. It was called open enrollment because they were concerned we wouldn't get a proper education in our segregated neighborhood schools. So starting from the 2nd grade, I rode the bus 2 hours every day to a school on the white side of town. It was the wealthiest, whitest school. And so it was fraught in many of the ways that desegregation is fraught. Our schools weren't integrated. There were a handful of Black kids in white schools, and also we were working class going into wealthy schools. So I think I experienced kind of the best and the worst of public education in that I got a really good public education. At the end of the day, when all the other kids walked home, we had to get on a bus and get shipped back to our side of town. And there was a lot of racial conflict and angst in my experience. So I think it would have been different had we had a truly integrated educational experience, but busing usually only went one way. So they called it desegregation or integration, but the white kids were not being bused into our schools. But of course, I've often wondered if I'd remained in my segregated schools, would I have gotten the type of education that allowed me to become the person that I ultimately did? And I don't know the answer to that, but the data and the research shows that the odds would have been against me. I would have loved to have had an academic experience where I wasn't always not having to prove myself, because students have to prove, of course, that they're good students, and you know that type of challenge is good. But just to prove my basic humanity, right, my basic intelligence, my basic right to be there, that just feels like that would be so liberating. And whenever I talk to students who have gone to historically Black colleges, that's how they feel about it. So when I was applying for colleges, the only colleges I knew about were predominantly white colleges. And I can actually remember how I discovered there was such a thing, which is I got into the University of Notre Dame and I was looking around for scholarships, and I saw this organization called the National Negro College Fund. So I contacted them and they said they only gave scholarships to Black colleges. And I remember being like, wait, there's Black colleges? I had no idea, but by then it was too late. I'd already accepted at Notre Dame. It was late to be applying and trying to figure college out. But I've often said, one of the few regrets I have in life, I don't tend to be a backwards looking person for my own life, was that I wasn't aware that there were historically Black colleges and that I did not attend one. When I think about my experience at the University of Notre Dame, it was an experience of always being the outsider, of feeling at all times that I wasn't really supposed to be there, of always being one of the only ones. I think many Black students tend to have a very limited experience of college when we go to predominantly white institutions. When you go to a historically Black college, you, for one of the only times in your life, get to be surrounded by high-achieving Black folks in a completely Black setting, at a setting that's designed for you. You know, when I'm on Howard's campus or A&T's campus or Central's campus, and you look at the buildings are named after Black people, the art on the wall, the portraits are Black people, it's an experience that you don't really have anywhere else in America, and affirming that kind of long history of academic striving, to be surrounded by that and not just always have to live in opposition, right? Like so often when we're at predominantly white institutions is succeeding in spite of, right? It's trying to find a way. It's trying to prove that you belong. We know how to even the playing field in education. It's not rocket science. I mean, first of all, you have to fund schools equally, which actually doesn't mean providing all the schools identical funding. If you're serving a population that is more disadvantaged, if you're concentrating poverty in schools, then those schools clearly will need more money to do the same things. We've never provided all of our children equal access to a quality education. That's the same thing for colleges. We know that historically black colleges have never received the type of funding, even within a state system, that white colleges have, because black Americans for the first 250 years in our country were not allowed to acquire any wealth. Our institutions don't have the endowments that white institutions have, but they're serving a much higher level of low-income students. So once again, black institutions are tasked with serving a higher need community with fewer funds than other organizations. Funding is critical. Having access to the same types of facilities. I mean, really all of the same things that they were asking for in Brown v. Board of Education 60 years ago. We've never done that on scale for black kids in this country. And then when black kids' test scores somehow miraculously don't match those of schools that have higher levels of curriculum, better instruction, better facilities, then we want to blame black families and black children when the inequality is structural. We know what to do. There's a reason every black child is raised with the adage that you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. It's not fair. It's a burden to put on a black student. I mean, my good friend Ta-Nehisi, one of the things he always says is freedom is the ability to be mediocre, right? Like we shouldn't have to always work harder, do more, but that's not the society that we live in. We have a society that doesn't value black children, that doesn't value black intellect, that believes that if we're in these spaces, it's because we somehow didn't deserve to be there. So it's this constant having to prove, and that is exhausting, and it's also impossible, because none of us are ever going to be able at all times to be the exceptional black person. And this is where that idea of respectability comes into that. Black people have to be perfect in every way in order to succeed, but other groups aren't expected to have perfection, and none of us can be that way. So I think, again, this speaks to the value of black institutions, is an understanding that black people, we exist in the full spectrum of life just like any other group of people. We will make mistakes. Many of us will succeed and many of us will struggle. And that is what life is. So I think that the benefit of having these institutions and supporting these institutions is we know that when black students are in those environments, they thrive. So we know that if black students are affirmed and given an education that respects them as human beings, that also understands that a student who comes in academically behind doesn't mean that that student isn't ambitious or motivated. It means that they have been failed in their educational institutions prior to that. And historically, black institutions take the student as a whole. And they're actually, instead of being built to weed out black students, they are built around the idea that we as a race rise together. And so we have to support all of our students. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I'm the 8th person to go from my family to go to Hampton University. So, and back then was Hampton Institute. But my dad, my brother, my aunts, my uncles, so they were like, my mother's joke was, you can go wherever you want to go. Your tuition will be sitting at Hampton. So, I grew up in a Hampton family, so it was just kind of very natural.
Yeah.
Tell me about Prairie.
Man, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about the illustrious, the most excellent, they try to duplicate, they try to imitate, but to no end. Prairie View A&M University.
And so why did you choose Prairie View?
What's crazy is, like in high school, it was my mom that was really, my parents were like, kind of similar to you. It wasn't as specific as Hampton, but they were like, you can do whatever you want to do after college,
right?
But you going to college. Like, that's not an option,
right?
And my father went to Jackson State.
Okay.
My mother went to Mississippi State. She was like one of the, one of the few black women, on that campus back then. And my mom taught at Florida A&M. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was in high school in Tallahassee.
Wow.
And so HBCUs it was just part of the fabric of my experience growing up. And so I was like, you know, the band, the marching bands, like you see a marching band at a black school versus a PWI.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't want to like,
Right.
You ain't trying to hear that.
Those were the original music videos, right?
Exactly. So it was just the culture, you know, the culture. And in terms of Prairie View, they have a top-notch engineering program. And back then, I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. You know, a whole lot of shit has changed since then.
Wow.
But, that's how I ended up at PV.
Yeah, I was lucky because Hampton has a really great media department, and now it's run by Scripps Howard. But that was really great for me too, because it was so intense about the media department, reporting. I mean, like hardcore professors.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was important for me to get that education on the history of Black journalism and the Black press.
Yeah.
And kind of an opportunity, right, to shape my future of how I could make a change.
And to
in the
network
world.
within the space of
Yeah, definitely network.
Yeah.
For me, Hampton was really dope. Like my friends that I made there, I'm still cool with.
Yeah.
And I think there was this real sense, especially like, you know, it's a Black college, so you're in an all-male dorm your freshman year. There's not a lot of like co-ed living until sophomore year, maybe.
Well, it's not supposed to be co-ed.
Well, it's not supposed to be.
But you figure out ways.
Yeah, people climbing walls and climbing through windows. But yeah, like some of my really just great friends, and the male bonding in our dorm was like people cutting your hair, hanging out, eating pizza, eating Vienna sausages, playing spades, all the things. And you knew if you went out and went to parties on the yard or off the yard, that your brothers had your back.
Yep.
Always.
Yeah. I think that the Brotherhood at Prairie View, it started freshman orientation. Yeah. First couple days, I met one of my best friends to this day. His name is Cam, and like we clicked right away. And then we had a little circle of homies. And next thing you know, like you start roasting each other, and like you said, you got a cat you got a class clown in the group that usually was me and a couple others. You got the cat that's gonna cut the hair. Right. You got the dude that's dressed fresh every day, and he got the plug at like Dillard's or Macy's or something. And he's like, yo, I got the polos, I got the Nauticas, and so you had, before you knew it, you had a squad that was resourceful. That's right. Not everybody had a car.
That's right.
So one person, one or two people had a car, old hoopty or something. And so the Brotherhood from the beginning, like I don't think it could be described in words, because it's to this day, I still keep in contact with those folks.
I met one of my best friends, like just moving into the dorm with my parents. Yeah. And he was with his parents, and he made a joke. And then that was it. And, he was from Chicago, so I would go visit him in Chicago on the holidays. Yeah. He would come to Cincinnati to visit me for holidays. But what was great was he had a whole network of friends that went to Howard. Mm-hmm. So then when we would go to D.C. on the road trips, we would stay with all his boys from Chicago. So it got to the point where that one person, Frank Peters, became my network to all the other HBCUs, which was really dope.
People disparage HBCUs by way of, that's not the real world, that's not reality. And you go to a PWI, there's networking opportunities. When we talk about this Brotherhood, that's a different kind of network. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure you got some cats that you can call up right now.
Right now.
And if you needed something, they're not even gonna ask questions.
Right.
They're just gonna be like, you can explain later if you need to explain at all. I got you.
True story. Move into my dorm, and my roommate got there before me. And I was like, because you want to claim the space. Like, you want to be by the window, all the things. Yeah. So he's setting up DJ equipment in the room. And I was like, how this going to work? Because I'm here to study. And you got a whole DJ set up in the room?
Yeah.
And his name is Graham Dillard. So he runs BLS now. Like the network of people that you meet that you can still call on is really, really real.
We both went to undergrads, HBCU. But for graduate school, I went to a PWI in Los Angeles, Loyola Marymount University. And it was significant difference in culture, in community. But what I recognized and had come to understand for other PWIs is that, black folks gonna come together. As we say, irregardless. Irregardless to the fact. We're gonna come together. And I saw that when I was in graduate school, and it was powerful. But the black folks there were tight. And as a graduate student, having come from an HBCU, it was important for me to be a part of that community. And it turned out that I became like a big brother. And they had, they got the Black Student Union, and so they would have these meetings, and it's interesting because I found, I don't know if it's the same for other PWIs, but I found that the black folks at that institution and the BSU were almost extra black. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's like dear white people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got to be extra to kind of counter what you're experiencing, with the other folks at the institution, right? And so you see your kin folks, you give the head nod. You know what I'm saying? You say what's up, and people want to call it self-segregation, but like minds kick it with like minds. And so if you're having shared experiences as a black person at a white campus, it would behoove you to come together and create community out of necessity.
So when I left Hampton, I studied abroad. I studied in London for the summer through a Boston University program and studied British media and advertising. And I was the only black person in the program. And so that, I was kind of nervous, like, is my HBCU education going to hold me down?
Bruh, speak on it.
In the real world.
Yeah.
And so I did great in the London program, and it was good. But when I went to Columbia, I was like, oh, I am just as good, if not better, than the rest of y'all. And so I think that was one of the things, I think about when I studied French at Hampton, we studied it through the lens of West Africa. When we studied anything, we were given so much history, and we were taught to be analytical and create strategies and really look at how systems were built. And I think that just helped protect you. And it's just, you had to be better in the real world. So I think when I've worked through media, I've always wanted to show black people at their brightest, their finest, their smartest, their most brilliant, because we are. But there weren't platforms that showed us in that way. So I was very fortunate to be on the founding staff of Vibe and work my way up the ladder. And we always talked about how do we show black folks and black culture in a way that is as good as or better than what Rolling Stone and Vanity Fair were doing. And at the same time, Essence has such a huge legacy of great journalism and great storytelling and uplifting black women. And so every place that I've worked, I've been able to bring that, black excellence to the table and really show people like, no, this is who we really are.
What you said is very powerful, because in and of ourselves, we are great.
Yes.
And I have a problem with us continuing to compare ourselves to PWIs, as an HBCU. It's like, nah, dog, like, we got it. Like, we have our own identity.
Right.
With indifference to who you compare us to.
That's right.
And I remember I kind of had, when I went to graduate school, I went to study philosophy. And I had somewhat of an imposter syndrome, And I remember being in the library on one page for like 30 minutes. And I had an intellectual inferiority complex. And I was like, I come from I'm unbeknownst to me, I'm subscribing to the stereotypes and the stigma. I come from an HBCU. I can't hang with these cats from like Xavier, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, you know what I'm saying? Prairie View A&M University, Hampton University, North Carolina A&T, FAMU, all these places, they prepare you in a way that you can't get. No, because we have to do it double. We have to prepare for the real world, but we also are reinforcing the world from which we are born.
Right.
And that's the world of blackness.
We're taught at HBCUs to be leaders in our community, to give back, to lift up our brothers and sisters, but to also have contextual relevance when we are approaching anything that we did. So if you're in the student union, if you're a student leader, if you're in a fraternity or sorority, it's always about being the best, right?
Yes. Always.
Always. Like, that wasn't even a, like, you gotta be the best.
You got to be the best.
You know? There was a standard of excellence, which is the motto at Hampton, that I think I wanted to bring to the world, but also show the world that my community is more than enough.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting how the younger generation is really more focused on kind of self-care and balance and kind of debunking respectability politics. But I think there has to be a mix in that. Sometimes HBCUs, right, can be a little too old school.
Yes, absolutely. That respectability politics in HBCUs, I think, is still prevalent.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you need to tuck your shirt in, you need to, you know, wear your hair proper, and, you know, like, I still think there is a component of HBCUs where they're still training.
Yeah.
And not educating,
Right.
you know, with regard to critical thinking. When you subscribe to what other people consider to be the best, then you also subscribing to what they think you should do to be the best.
That's right.
And that's where you run into problems in this comparison thing.
Yeah.
Like if you like, oh man, Emil out there grinding, I need to grind. Well, Emil got his own thing going.
Right.
I can't do Native Son like Emil could do Native Son.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I need to figure out what my thing is.
That's right.
And you know, and rock with it. And of course, you need to sleep, eat, and, you know, commune with folks every once in a minute.
Be in community and be in fellowship and do this.
Yeah, and do this. Because this is the important work, part of the important work here.
That's right.
We didn't talk about homecoming.
Hampton's band is crazy with it. And the Ebony Fire dancers, you can't beat that. But just to be in a space where it's like, you know, especially for me, it's like my dad, my brother went to Hampton. So it was really like homecoming. And then to see my pops with like all his boys that he went to school with and my brother with all his friends, I mean, it was literally like a family reunion.
Yeah.
But, you know, I loved when we played the other HBCUs, like the Hampton Howard game or the Morehouse.
Yeah.
But I mean, the tailgate parties,
Yeah.
the bowling parties, the food, the market, all of it.
Yeah.
Fashion shows.
Yeah, fashion show. Yeah, you got the fashion show, the step shows,
Yes.
the barbecues, the tailgate is ridiculous. You know, you got the concert. Like at my homecoming, man, we had UGK, Outkast, and Parliament Funkadelic.
Wow.
And one homecoming.
Right.
And then of course with black people, homecoming week, you got to have a gospel concert.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You gonna shake your booty one night and praise the Lord the next. You know what I'm saying? You gonna throw that thing back and ask for forgiveness the next night. Let them use you. Let them use you. You know what I'm saying?
So I think for me, the Black college experience was about community. And community, you know, we talked about our boys and the Brotherhood and stuff like that, but I also met amazing women. And, you know, my big sister, Jocelyn Cooper, would, you know, have me hang out with her girls, and they would all cook for me, and they all took care of me. And then their boyfriends would look out for me and be like my big brothers. And even a lot of the professors really like took an interest in me. And I think that idea of each one teach one and help one and giving back has really shaped how I view community now. And I feel like I want to give back the way so many people poured into me. And I was doing it then, like Kierna Mayo is my little sister from Hampton, and she and I will still hook each other up for gigs or support each other when something's going down and bounce ideas off of each other. So when I think of creating this community for Black, gay, and queer men called Native Son, I mean, first of all, the name comes from James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son, who I saw James Baldwin and met him at Hampton University. He came to speak. And so when I think about that moment and how important it was, I wanted to create that space for my community so that they could feel whole, that they could feel like enough, the way we experienced that at HBCU.
Right. It's powerful. Yeah. And I think, what I love is that about Prairie View, it's a land-grant institution that was founded on a former plantation of enslaved Africans. Yes. And so just the, it's fun, it's entertaining and all of that, but then when you peel away the layers of what it means to have an educational institution on the grounds where we were once enslaved is powerful.
And reclaiming the land.
And reclaiming the land. And we're there celebrating our community, celebrating one another, supporting one another. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right.
Prairie View, TSU, Tuskegee, Hampton, Howard, Spelman, Clark, FAMU.
At all.
Because I tell you what they ain't got at University of Maryland. They ain't got Catfish Fridays in the cafeteria.
That part.
They ain't got that?
That part. We having clam bake.
Hello once again. I'm Veronica Chambers, and welcome to this Black History Continued conversation on Black girlhood, where we explore coming of age and the importance of sisterhood. We're still at Howard University, and I'm elated to be joined by 3 community builders, creatives, advocates. These are Wonder Women who believe in the power of sisterhood. Please welcome the one and only Glory Edom. She's the founder of Well-Read Black Girl, a book club and digital platform that promotes Black literature and sisterhood. Gloria has won numerous awards for her work supporting and sustaining literature. She's also the editor of 2 amazing anthologies, Well-Read Black Girl, Finding Our Stories, Discovering Ourselves, and a new anthology on girlhood, which will be published this month. She is also a proud alumni of Howard University. The work of Christine A. Platt reflects her practice of living with intention. She holds a BA in Africana Studies, an MA in African American Studies, and a JD in General Law. She is bad. She's written over 24 literary works for people of all ages. And when she's not writing, Christine spends her time curating the Afro Minimalist, a creative platform that chronicles her journey to intentional living. Last but not least, we have our friend and certified woman warrior, Jody Patterson. She is an activist, an entrepreneur, and mother of 5. When her son announced at the age of 3, "Mama, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy," she set out to inform herself, shift her own biases, and change the way our community understood gender. A graduate of Spelman College, she's also the author of 2 books, The Bold World, a memoir of family and transformation, and Born Ready, this true story of a boy named Penelope, which allows us to hear the voices of her children. Okay, let's get into it. So, sisters, I'm so happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you.
Let's start with this question.
Okay.
What's your favorite defining memory of girlhood? And maybe one that represents a little bit that tells us something about the woman you've become.
Such a good question.
We're looking at you, Jody.
I love it.
Let's start with Jody.
I love that question. Okay, so my dad and my mom, my dad's from Harlem and my mom's Southern, so I have that influence, right? And there are so many things that they said to me that stick and that resonate with the woman I am, but I think the one that I draw on the most, 2. My dad told us, you're not born to be pretty, you're born to be powerful. And he played that out for us. So if we wanted to wear our jeans under our Sunday dresses, he would say, who cares what they look like? They're comfortable, let them wear them, to Abyssinian Baptist Church. If we wanted to not brush our hair, which was, I remember this one time, this spring, we didn't want to brush our hair, and he said, great idea, let's do an Afro contest. Who can go the most unbrushed Afro by Easter? You're not born to be pretty, you're born to be powerful. So he really rooted us in who we are from the inside and our feelings. That was one thing. And then the second thing that really sticks out for me is when I was going off to college with all this, power in me. And I said, Dad, I have big dreams about college. He said, baby girl, you can go anywhere in the world you want. The whole world is yours. Make any choice that you decide, but I'm only paying for a black college. So he clearly made it so that there's power and there's blackness And that was I guess how I see myself right now as a woman.
Wow,
beautiful.
That is wonderful.
You want to go next, Glory? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I spent so much of my childhood at the library. Same. And my mom was like, these books are your friends. And so treat them with kindness, treat them with respect, like hold them, cherish them, don't use them as disposable objects, you know? So I had to be like, I had book covers. I was always like being so precious and holding them with such care. And then clearly as I grew older, that kind of went into every aspect of my life, like whether it's a book or a relationship or anything in between, to treat things with care, you know, especially if it's like something that a community is going to share and borrow. The library is such a special space where so many different people come in, whether you're young or old, and you're sharing things together. And so that was something that was always like really important for me and my mother and our family, to just like share and be considerate when it comes to, the objects that you love. It's funny, I spent a lot of time in the library as well growing up. I grew up in South Florida, and there really was not much to do. Go to the beach, go to the library on the weekends. And so I too have fond memories of that. I think my girlhood memory is really wanting my mother to tell me what I should be when I grow up.
To be?
Yeah, and I would be like, what should I be when I grow up? And she would be like, I don't know, what do you want to be? I'd be like, I don't know, that's why I want you to help me, right? And I realize now like what a gift that she was giving me, which was whatever you want to be, whenever you want to be, do that, right? And I've reinvented myself many, many times, and so I'm just so grateful that she did not tell me, you should be this or you should be that. And it was frustrating when I was like, help me. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And you will figure it out, right? And so I think that's one of like my favorite like girlhood memories, of not being told you should be this because you're a girly. You should be this because as a Black woman, you now have an opportunity to do this, right? It just took a lot of the pressure off of me to just figure it out, you know?
That's an incredible amount of freedom.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we're on the campus of Howard University, and Glory and Jody, I know you guys are both proud alums of HBCUs. Can you talk about the schools you chose and tell us a little bit about your experiences of sisterhood on campus? I know, Jody, you write about it in your book.
Talk about it, I write about it, I live it.
I was about to say, you live it. It's
Spelman, so when my dad said, I'm only paying for a Black college, I ended up going to Spelman. And I think it was one of the most defining shifts. I went to an predominantly all-white girls' school in New York City, and then going to an all-women's, predominantly Black college in the South, just like rooted me. Prior to my president was Dr. Cole, but prior to that, Spelman was really traditional. So it was white gloves, it was curfew, and it was, be smart but marry well. Yeah. When Dr. Cole came in, she said, you might want to ground yourself in family, but also be an activist. So it was like this combination of activism and family that is what I carry today. It redefined motherhood for me. I think of mothering as building, not just mothering as task mastering, and I think that's from Spelman. Spelman said women are, whether you birth or not, mothers. We mother causes, we mother people, and do it based in activism and the love of the family.
I love that.
Wow. I love it too.
Beautiful. Well,
Glory?
we are on my campus right
We are
now.
homecoming with
HU. I mean, I can go on and on about the reason why I came here, but the number one reason was because of my dad. My dad is an alumni of Howard University as well. What was my mom doing? She didn't tell me nothing. Yes, dads were like... No, it was like automatic. He's like, you are going here. I love and it. so I would come on this campus as a young person. I was here at like 10, 11. He would come to alumni events and things. I was on the yard. It felt like an extension of my home. But in terms of like who I became here, it just helped me just embrace my Blackness in a whole new way. Like it took away any sense of self-doubt. Like the moment I started being on this campus and meeting friends and being in community, I just felt so proud of who I was. And it wasn't as if I wasn't proud before, but it amped it up a lot, This space, the legacy, it's just a feeling.
It is in the air.
It is. It really, really is. And I think
you guys are just making us jealous.
We're looking at each other like,
Yes. So Christine,
You guys are honorary.
I need all the honorary. I go for it. I'm just so drawn to it. How did you? We're talking about home. We're talking about homecoming. How did you find home in your college experience?
Well, unlike these fabulous women over here, I did not go to an HBCU. I went to a PWI. And, you know, as a first gen, you know, I think that there's also something there, right? When, you know, your father is, you know, it's like, you're going to go on this campus, you're going to go on this campus, and that roots you in a different way. But I think oftentimes what happens when you're first gen is you don't have that guidance, right? I picked the college that my best friend went to. Like, yeah, we're gonna go to college together, right? And I think what does happen oftentimes on the campuses of predominantly white institutions, and I don't know if it was this way for you, but we sort of form our own little HBCUs, right? Like all the black folks find each other. And it was just a very beautiful experience, right? And I think I learned to navigate the world in a way as a black person, as a black woman, with all of the racialized drama and issues around me, but I was able to do it in a safe environment with my people, right? And so even though we were on, you know, a campus that was predominantly white, we had our own little village and our own little community, and it was just a beautiful experience. Probably not as beautiful as y'all.
No, we gather.
That's true.
We gather wherever it is, whether it's on a campus or on the streets. We find a way to gather and make our HBCUs, make our Tulsas.
We do.
Make our churches, right?
We do. And you know what's so funny, Jody? I love that you say that because, and I'm sure some of your friends will be able to say this as well, I know they came to visit you. I know if they went to a PWI. Because I found myself on FAM's campus.
Blown.
I would go to FAM's campus whenever I really needed that extra dose, or like, you know, your friends are talking about being on the yard and you're like, I want to be on the yard. What is that like? You know? So I feel like I had the best of both worlds, I would say.
I love it. You know, I know that movement is so much a part of our experiences as black people, as growing up as black women. Jody, I know that you did gymnastics growing up. I would love to talk about, like, each of you, what kind of sports or movement or dance meant to you? Like, how did you come to fully inhabit your body as a black girl?
It's so important. I think we underestimate sports, competitive sports. For girls in particular, I think, well, one, like, there is a correlation between mental flexibility and physical flexibility. So just as you can train your muscles to be mentally flexible, you can train your mind for mental dexterity, right? So that's important. The other thing is, I don't want to be treated fragilely, and I have to say this carefully because I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about, as a person, I am so able-bodied, and if I train hard, my body will work for my spirit. And so I learned that through gymnastics. I was also in the circus. I was a circus acrobat.
That's so amazing!
The Big Apple Circus, but you know, the idea of being limber, understanding how to fall and get back up, understanding the mind-body connection, and then also being unafraid of death-defying moves. As a gymnast, you're flipping and twirling on a bar, and you have to be able to psych yourself into something you've never done before. You have to psych yourself into trying new things and believing in it and having all your senses awakened. So I think whether it's tennis or track and field or gymnastics or circus acrobat, we need to get our girls into sports, have them compete, and have their bodies work for their souls and not the other way around.
I love that. Have their bodies work for their souls.
I love that. You know, Jody, hearing you say that, it makes me think of like dancers. And they, you know, dancers talk about how they're so in tune with their bodies, right? Because so much of what you were talking about, that agility, is really like learning yourself, right? And learning your body and learning to appreciate your body, and, you know, how we heal and how we can grow, right? I mean, I feel like there's so much there. I did track and field, but boy, if I would have had an opportunity to do circus, I would have did circus for sure. I would have did circus. So I did relay, 4x4 relay. I did hurdles, triple jump, long jump, the whole nine. Yeah, and I feel like even now it's something like if I'm stressed out, I'm like, let me just go for a run. You know, let me just go for a run. Let me just go for a run. And it does. It just teaches you a lifelong awareness and appreciation, I think, for your body.
Yeah. It also opens up your creativity. I did not do track and field, and I wasn't a gymnast.
Would you have done circus?
I would have, yes, right? I would have done circus. I was a cheerleader. I did pep squad. I had a dance troupe that me and my best friends named Twin Plus. They were twins, and I was the plus.
I love it.
So we were always dancing and always like very fluid and just like open to just trying new things.
Fluid.
Like, yeah, you know, when you're not like embarrassed, you know, sometimes when you're dancing, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out the 8 count, but like being in tune with who you are and giving voice to your identity through movement, I think is so crucial, and it allows for just more creativity for sure.
I love it. That's great. I want to talk a little bit about Well-Read Black Girl. It is the 5th anniversary, am I right?
Yes, it is.
Congratulations.
Yes. And you were at the first, you were at the second.
Yes. I mean, the community that you've brought together. Can you talk about starting our own spaces and what advice you give to other women who want to like make a movement in some shape or form?
Well, without question, being on this campus, being a student in Howard University is what started Well-Read Black Girl in so many ways. It allowed me to look around and work with my peers and understand the value of literature. This is the campus of Zora Neale Hurston, you know.
Toni Morrison,
hello. The Queen. So many iconic, beautiful figures were here. And it allowed me to see that if I want to create something, if I want to build community, I just need to like look to my neighbor, ask them, you know, be in fellowship, you know, and like not be afraid of the no. Like I am not afraid of the no. The first person I asked to be part of the book club was Naomi Jackson, who I absolutely love. Naomi, her book was The Star Side of Bird Hill. It was a small bookstore, and I invited her to my book club, and she said yes.
Wow.
You know, she could have said no. When she said yes, and me like not being afraid to ask her or invite people, strangers on the subway, people that I just like met that I was just so excited about this book and I wanted to talk to them and form this book club. And that was what the beginning of the movement was. And in the first year, even the first 2 years, it was 20 people in the room. You know what I mean? It was like, and now we have almost over 400,000 people on Instagram and, you know, thousands and thousands of people following us. But like those, I wasn't looking for this immense like return in quantity. I just wanted really good intentional friendships and conversations, and I wanted to support the authors. Like you met in the beginning too.
I was just going to say, do you remember?
I read both of your books for book club, you know?
Well, Jody was like official. I was like indie pub, back when like indie pub was not a thing, right? Like
Indie is always a thing, baby.
Yeah. And I remember, you know, there was so much stigma around self-published books back then. And I think that has been such a pathway for so many Black authors anyway, historically. So I didn't have that same sort of, I guess, feeling about it until you're like, I want to get my book in the store. And they're like, and who is your publisher? I was, oh, it's me. And they're like, and I just remember you selecting my indie pubbed book, and it was so good. It was so amazing. It was so amazing.
You were wonderful, and there's so many wonderful authors that, you know, whether you self-publish or you're with a big house, it doesn't matter. Like the talent and the work is there, and I want to support that, and I want to cultivate that space so we can read and fellowship together. And it's not just about the books. It's like, how can we love on one another?
It was community. And
I love that element of choosing first yourself and then choosing each other.
Yes.
Seems so powerful. I want to ask one last lightning quick question. Since we're talking about girlhood, if you had to give a message to your 15-year-old self, it's a classic, but it's a goodie.
So like
Christine.
Last year?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I feel 15 sometimes.
You're going to put me in the hot
Glory,
seat first? Okay.
And then Jody. What would the message you would give to your 15-year-old self?
You know, I was so whimsical and creative and just, I was a special 15-year-old. And I would tell my 15-year-old self to just continue to be that, right? Like the parts of me that, you know, at 15 I thought were
so weird, or but I still embrace that part of who I am. I think those are the parts of me that have made me who I am today, right? To be able to be creative and tell stories and, to reinvent myself and those things that we talked about. And so I would just tell her to keep going and to also not worry about being thin.
Oh,
Jody.
Nobody wants to hear that, but it's
Nobody
so
wants to
true.
hear this story, but it's a true story, especially as a Black woman and as a Black woman growing up in the South. With no body.
But in fact, we actually do have a body. We have
Yeah, I was about to say,
we literally have a body.
But you didn't feel like you had one,
because it was not the
It was not the body. And I love that, you talked about your experience in gymnastics and circus, and, I'm wondering, did I embrace even though I had feels about it, did I embrace it a little more because I was an athlete and I got to see the other benefits of being tall and thin, right? But it was an issue. I wanted some curves. But I would tell her, don't worry, they coming.
The curves are on the way.
They're coming, girl. Hang in there.
Glory?
My 15-year-old self, like you, I was really silly. I mean, not silly, I'm silly.
Yeah,
but,
that's why we get along.
I would say, turn the obstacles into popsicles.
That's cute.
Like, just be, own your story, be yourself, and the things that seem challenging and feel like they're never gonna end, they do.
Yeah.
They end, and things, you'll learn from them. Take that lesson and be reflexive and just keep going.
I love that.
Keep going. Okay, so I've had this thought recently. It's been like over the last couple of years. What do I want to teach my children? And what do I want to teach myself? And what I've come up with is this phrase called starfish. I've been telling myself to starfish. I've been telling my children to starfish. And for me, I think it looks, I spend a lot of time on the beach in Martha's Vineyard, and so I was thinking starfish, they stretch out and they touch all aspects of life. There's no girl starfish or boy starfish. They touch it all. And if a limb is severed, it regenerates.
Yes.
And so I've been saying and tattooing and mantraing starfish. Don't ever underestimate your infinite potential. Don't be just girl or boy. Don't be just 50-year-old woman or 13-year-old child. Be all things. Be everything. Because we really are non-binary in that sense. We can just be. So I say starfish.
I love that. Can we all say starfish?
Yes.
That makes me think of really quick, Jody, really quick. Yeah. So I have this saying that is, I am not a grown woman. I am a growing woman.
Yes.
Oh.
And may I always be growing and never fully grown. And that starfish now, that will be my image for that, right? Because it just takes some of that pressure away, right? May we all be growing.
Yeah. Always grow and become.
Maybe always be growing.
I love this. Thank you
Veronica,
so much for joining us, Jody, Glory,
together.
Christine, and it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
We love you and adore you for this.
You're so wonderful. Thank you.
Yes,
so
thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. It's been a profound experience to be part of this project and to work alongside a team that's tasked with mining the past and connecting that with those who are charting our future. I'd like to thank every single person that has contributed to this year-long series and each of you for watching along. We are so glad you joined us. I also want to extend love and appreciation to our wonderful community partners throughout the year, and especially those who supported and shared our content. This program will be available at any time and viewable right here on YouTube. And you can explore more about the series, the incredible work we're doing on page and digitally that includes articles, interactive experiences, photography, and more at nytimes.com/BHC. Goodbye for now.